Hello and welcome to Cupcake Addiction's Illusion Teacup and Saucer Cake Pop tutorial, where I'm going to be showing you how to make this completely edible teacup, which is actually a cake pop, complete with a saucer and this gorgeous illusion effect that makes it look like the little jug of milk is actually pouring straight into your cup of tea or coffee. To make the teacup part of today's tutorial, I've got some melted dark chocolate. You're going to need a little bit of chocolate ganache. So this is basically 2 parts chocolate to 1 part cream. I will leave a small batch ganache recipe in the description box below. I've got some melted white chocolate. I've also got a couple of pre-rolled cake pop bowls. These have not been refrigerated. I'm using fondant in blue and white today. I've also got a pair of scissors. I've got a Ziploc bag and some wax paper, an edible marker, a pastry brush. I've got a fondant rolling pin. You'll need a cupcake case and preferably not a really thin, low quality one. Try and get a bit of a higher grade cupcake case. I've got a pretzel stick, a couple of toothpicks and a small circle cutter. Off to the side I've also got just a regular cupcake tray. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to prepare is our little teacup outer. So you want to take some of that dark chocolate, pour it into your cupcake case and just use your pastry brush just to spread it right up the sides. You want to make sure that you're completely coating the inside of that cupcake case and then just pop it into your cupcake tray to hold its shape. Off into the fridge to let that set. While that one's setting, you want to put a little bit more of that melted dark chocolate into your Ziploc bag, squeeze it all the way down to the corner and just snip a little corner off. It's just fashioning us a bit of a thin piping tip. And I'm just going to pipe a few little kind of backwards looking C's. These are going to be for the handles of our little teacups. Make sure you've got a few more of these than you think you're going to need, just in case any of them break. They can go off into the fridge as well. And then you want to grab your blue fondant and your white fondant, and you can also use modelling chocolate here. And you want to roll it out not too thin. You want to cut 2 small fondant discs from the white and another 2 from the blue. And then we're going to take a little bit of that melted white chocolate and we're going to stick these pieces together. Make sure you don't go too crazy on the white chocolate here. Just put a little bit sort of in the middle of your disc because you don't want that to come seeping out the sides in between your white and blue layers. Once your layers are sandwiched, squeeze them together quite tightly and then roll them on the bench, and that's just going to help your shape come together as one piece. Then you want to take your thumb and your forefinger and just pinch out like a little bit of a milk spout. Take your edible marker, a bit of food colouring now, and you just want to write the words milk on the sides of your little milk jugs. You want to take your pretzel now and dip it into that melted white chocolate. You can kind of just dip it about 2/3 of the way in and then give it a little shake down so that melted white chocolate comes almost all the way down to the bottom, but it doesn't have to go right to the bottom. Take your little milk jug, and I'm just twisting the pretzel stick as I sort of shove it into the top of that milk jug. And you want to make sure that your milk jug's on a bit of an angle because no one pours the milk straight up and down. It's kind of got to go on an angle in the direction that little spout is pouring. Take your white chocolate and just put a little bit more white chocolate kind of around the pretzel stick where it meets up with the jug. And then you want to just rest the end of your pretzel stick on something and let that dry. By now your little chocolate cupcake case should be well and truly set. So you just want to kind of get your fingernails in there, a sharp knife, and just separate the cupcake wrapper from the actual cupcake. Be kind of gentle here because you don't want to crack it, but they are pretty sturdy. You should now have your nice little chocolate cupcake case and you can discard your wrapper. Taking your cake pop balls, so we're using 2 here. 1 is the perfect size for a miniature and 2 is the perfect size for a large. So it depends on how big you want these desserts to be. But I'm just pushing those 2 in, and you want to have a gap of about 1 centimetre or so from the top of the rim. Make sure that your chocolate ganache is really fluid but not at all hot. So it should be not even warm, room temperature, and spoon a couple of spoonfuls of that ganache straight in on top of that cake pop mix. It's going to set the cake pop mix in there, but it's also going to give you that kind of cup of coffee, cup of tea effect. Now you want to just put in just a little bit of white chocolate and not too much here. And then with your toothpick, you're just going to swirl it around kind of roughly in the center. So this is supposed to look like the milk as it's adding into the cup of tea or coffee. Your pretzel stick and milk jug should now be completely set. So before that melted white chocolate starts to set, you just want to shove that all the way down into your cake pop and then take one of your little handles and just put the tip of the handle into the ganache and rest it on the side. Finally, to finish it off, I just rolled out a really tiny little handle for the milk jug, kind of a little ball, and then we turned it into this little horseshoe shape. And then I'm going to use just a fraction of white chocolate, or you can also use a little bit of water, just on the tiny little tips to attach that milk jug handle on. That's your completed illusion teacup cake pop, so let's move on now to our edible sauces. The things you're going to need to make the edible sauces, we're making these out of cookies today, so you're going to need a batch of our sugar cookie recipe. I will leave a link to that in the description box below. You're also going to need a circle cutter. I'll leave dimensions to this in the description box, and you'll see that I've pre-made a cookie just for speed today. I've got a cup, and this is just to make our little saucer indentation, so have a think about what you've got around the house that can do that. Some corn flour in a shaker. You can use either modelling chocolate or fondant here. I've gone with fondant, and I've got mine in white, and then I've got a blue, purple, and a pink. I've got a paintbrush, a fondant rolling pin, a little plunge cutter, and I'm opting for a flower design today, so you can use any cookie cutter, any type of cutter, and any design. And I've got a little bit of gold luster dust. Down here I've got 2 containers. In one of them is just some plain water, and in the other one is a little bit of either alcohol, clear alcohol, so such as vodka, or you can also use a clear lemon extract for this. You'll also need something to stick your fondant to your cookie, so I've opted for a lemon curd today, but you can also use Nutella, you could use a raspberry jam, anything you like, just something that's going to give your cookie a bit of stick. Off to the side I've got a baking tray with a little bit of wax paper just to cook our cookies on, and I've also got a preheated oven. So let's get started. You want to take your cookie dough and just roll it out relatively thin here, and then you just want to use your circle cutter just to cut a nice little round circle. Remove your excess, and before you do anything else, take your little cup. It's about the same size as the bottom of my cupcake cases, and just push it into the circle. I gave mine a little twist, and you can see there it kind of gives you that little cup holder section that you get in a normal saucer. Be really careful not to stretch that out of shape, and then you want to pop it onto your tray and off into the oven for about 8 to 10 minutes. When your cookie's completely cooled, you want to start preparing your fondant. So, like I said, either modelling chocolate or fondant's fine here, and you want to roll out that white fondant, not too thin here because we're going to roll it again shortly. Take your purple and you want to roll that out really, really thin as you can get it, and the same again with your blue and your pink. Using your plunge cutter now, you just want to cut out some of those little flower shapes or whatever shape you're using, and just put a tiny little bit of water, not too much water here, just in the center on the back. I put down like a bit of a scattering of my blue ones first, and then you can go through and fill in some of the gaps with some of your other colors. So a few of those purple ones and a few of those pink ones just to finish it off. Now take your roller and just lightly roll in one direction, and then turn the fondant and roll in the other direction to smooth those flowers down. Taking a tiny, tiny little ball of, I'm using purple at this stage, just put a tiny dot of water in the center of each of those flowers, and this is sort of optional extra detailing, but it does set them off, I think. Put a little contrasting ball of fondant in an opposing color, so purple on the pink, blue on the purple, that sort of a thing, and then roll it again just really lightly, once again going in both directions. So your fondant will be quite thin now. Now you want to take your cookie, and I'm just going to spread some of that lovely lemon curd all over it right the way to the edges. Take your cookie cutter and you want to choose the best section of your little patterned piece of fondant, so the one you think is going to give you the most flower detail, and just cut it out. This should be almost exactly the same size as your cookie, because that cookie recipe doesn't allow for any shrinkage or stretching. So you just want to run your fingers around the edges and make sure that it's really, really flush with the edges, and then smooth it down and make sure that you really smooth into that indentation where the cup holder is. A little bit of your gold luster dust or your gold shimmer powder into that alcohol or that lemon extract, and you just want to stir it around so it's a relatively thick sort of a paste. And then you're going to use your paintbrush, and we're going to paint directly onto that cookie and just edge the rim, sort of like a gilded saucer, kind of like your nan used to have. I like to make sure that I come just over the edges of the top section of the fondant so that you can see that gold from all angles, even if you're not looking at it directly from the side-on view. That's your saucer ready to go, so a little bit of lemon curd or ganache in the middle, and then just use that to attach your little illusion teacup. I hope you guys have loved learning how to make this fully edible cookie saucer with cake pop and chocolate cup and that over-the-top illusion effect. As always, thanks very much for tuning in to My Cupcake Addiction.